Well, welcome to this Saturday feature of the Daily Dose of Greek, and we're going to show how Greek matters for the reading, understanding, and savoring of the Greek New Testament. We're looking today at the Gospel of John, John 13:1 and John 19:30. And we're not going to take the time to read all this in Greek, but we'll just kind of get to the main point here. John 13:1. Before we dive into this, let's remind ourselves something about the structure of John. John is structured very simply. It begins with a prologue in the first 18 verses of the Gospel, and then John 1:18, chapter 1 to 12, is Jesus' public ministry, sometimes called the Book of Signs, where it reports various public signs that Jesus did that revealed his true identity. This language of signs, semea, is the language that John himself uses in John chapter 20, verse 30. He says, "Now Jesus did many other signs, semea, in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name." So it's a reporting of these events, these signs. It's John's language, isn't it? We're tempted to say miracles, but it seems to be more than that. It's a event, often miraculous, maybe always miraculous, that somehow unveils Jesus' true and full identity of who he is. People misunderstand him often on a very tangible level. Give us some more of that bread. But Jesus is the bread of life, the bread who's come down from heaven, and so you misunderstand the signs if you just see them as miracles, but you understand them rightly if you understand them as pointers to Jesus' true identity. Then in chapters 13 through 20, we have Jesus' love for his own, Jesus' private ministry to his disciples, followed by the epilogue in chapter 21. And so this chapter 13, we're at the very beginning of this Jesus' love for his own, Jesus' private ministry, Jesus sometimes called the Book of Glory, where Jesus reveals his glory. And in the Gospel of John, very explicitly, Jesus reveals his glory through dying on the cross for his people. And so here we begin that. This is sort of the hinge in the book. And John tells us now it was before the feast of the Passover, and knowing, that is Jesus knowing that his hour had come, that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world. And here's where we're focusing in. Telos, to the end. To the end, he loved them. Very literally, telos. And I think even just paying attention from a literary perspective to this introductory statement really helps understand the foot washing, which follows this, because in the foot washing, people, Jesus has an application of humble service, so I've washed your feet, so you should wash one another's feet. But he also says to Peter, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And Peter is kind of confused by this, but it seems clear Jesus, as I'm going to argue, try to point out here, Jesus is saying, unless you allow my cleansing sacrificial death to cleanse you, you cannot be my disciple. In other words, the sine qua non, the without which not, the indispensable element of being a follower of Christ, is turning from one's sin and receiving the forgiveness which is only made available through his sacrificial death on the cross. Now, I think this is made even more clear in the Greek. If we read, by the way that this final book of glory, this book of Jesus' love for his own, is hinged together by the root, the tel root there. Telos, meaning end, goal, or finish, and so the root of that is tel, and we see that repeated significantly when Jesus is on the cross, sort of an inclusio, a beginning and an end to this book of glory. And it says, hata, when therefore Jesus received the sour wine, he said, so this is the people offering him sour wine on the sponge, he said, and here's where we have the significant repetition of the root, tetelestai, That's if you see there, we have the reduplication, we have the mycitianings. That's just a perfect passive indicative, third person singular. It has been finished. Now, most English translations render it something like it is finished, it has been finished. And I think when they do that, the English reader of the Bible has a hard time seeing the connection between the way this section of John opens with Jesus loved them to the end, and now he says it is ended. So it's like in the Greek, it's like a sharp arrow, whoom, ba-doom, shooting through the book, landing on the bullseye here on the end with Jesus on the cross. It is finished. And notice that's the perfect tense. The most Greek grammarians understand the perfect to refer to a past event, something that's now completed, but that has an abiding state. And that's why English translations will render it is finished. They're trying to bring out, the translators are, this stative idea, this idea that it goes on, the state has been reached that continues. It's finished and it stays finished. It's ended and it stays ended. It stands finished. What a wonderful and comforting thought when it comes to Jesus' effectual saving love for you, that it's not hanging in the balance, but it is finished and completed and secure because of his death on the cross for his people. How wonderful and comforting that is. It is finished. We'll just finish translating the verse. And bowing the head, that is his head, right? In Greek, the constituent parts of the person, whether it's head, arm, leg, mind, spirit, the possessive idea of that is often implied by the article. So while it says bowing the head, in English we usually make those possessive ideas explicit of the constituent parts of the person. We would say his head, his mind, his spirit. So it's just a mismatch between Greek and English there. And so bowing the head, bowing his head, he gave up, not the spirit, but he gave up his spirit, right? Again, the same kind of idea of the implied possessive idea. So I just want you to see that, to see that, seeing the way that the book of glory here, Jesus' love for his own, John 13 through 20, is organized with this nice inclusio of telos and tetelestai, is something that I think escapes most English readers of the New Testament. And Greek matters for understanding, reading, savoring, and loving the New Testament.